Hello everyone and welcome to another WaddleArt artist vlog. I am WaddleArt, aka Bailey, or my real name Jessica, whichever one works best for you. And originally I had not planned on doing the intro with the camera on a stand, but well, sometimes technology doesn't work in your favor. My camera, unfortunately, has decided that it wants to die, and I don't know what's wrong with it. It was working perfectly fine a few days ago, and it just suddenly is now having some weird, like little ticking sounds whenever I turn it on or off. And I have both batteries and power outlet to charge this thing, but unfortunately things happen. And forgive my missing nail over here. I had an accident. However, I'm pretty darn sure it can be resolved with whatever the fix is. I don't know what the fix is though, but I have a bunch of friends who are big camera nerds who would be able to probably help me in figuring that out. But all that said, camera is currently in a state of retirement. So for today, what I wanted to do originally was another type of a progress vlog, but I think I'm going to change it up and have it be a little bit more about who and what is WaddleArt. So here on the desk, you will see a printed black and white illustration of Waddler the penguin planting a tulip. And this particular illustration was actually part of my April Patreon tiers that people were able to subscribe to and have these coloring pages available to them. So if that's something you're still interested in, the coloring pages are still available if you sign up at a tier, but the actual physical goodies for the month of April are in retirement. I haven't decided what I'll do with any of the extras that I may have. I'll figure that out another time. But what I wanted to do today was kind of talk about who and what WaddleArt is, what my goal is for WaddleArt, as well as for what the goal is for this YouTube channel. And what a better way to do it than to start off with a little bit of some coloring. I'll just have to figure out how I'm going to film it with this camera, since I don't have the camera up above right now to do that. But we'll see what we can end up doing. So let's get started, shall we? So first of all, as you probably are able to hear, I do have birds that are in the room here with me. So more than likely, you're going to end up hearing them throughout the recordings, and it's just going to have to be part of the nuance of the video. But that being said, what and who exactly is WaddleArt? So to put it in simple terms, WaddleArt is me. I created WaddleArt originally back in 2013, but it at that time wasn't actually finalized as WaddleArt. I had gone through a couple of different name variations and wasn't exactly sure what to settle on until I would say a couple years later, and then it got to that point where WaddleArt was what I focused on. And prior to that, I had come up with the name DRK, so it's supposed to just be the word dark, just without the A in it, 87, which is my birth year. And I didn't really like how that name went with me, so then I changed it to a Japanese phrase of kaze no sozo, which, if I remember correctly, meant winds of creation, which I thought was neat at the time, but it just wasn't quite right. And then WaddleArt came to me mostly for the reason of I love penguins big time. I have a little bit of a penguin obsession. And when WaddleArt came to me in that way, I thought, well, penguins are basically monogamous, at least in some fashion. And I wanted to be able to have it be that when I think of WaddleArt for myself, that I have a monogamous relationship with traditional and digital human-made art. And that is where WaddleArt came from, was the love of human-made on paper or on a tablet or on a Wacom drawing pad, the human element of art and art making. When I was able to finally pin down, okay, I know what WaddleArt is going to be in terms of what it is that I'm wanting to do, but was there going to be more to it than simply I want to make art for art's sake? Was it going to be that I also would want to expand on that? Would I want to go into the 3D space? Would I want to do a manufacturing of my own things? Do I want to print my own prints and do art shows and have some sort of an audience beyond what it is that I have locally to myself? And at the time, I honestly had no idea what I wanted to do in that regard, other than just make art itself. I remember when I was in my last year or two of university, I was preparing for my art show, and every senior who was preparing for their art show had to figure out what their direction was, what it is that they saw themselves doing, not just for the show itself, since it was also the final project for all graduates, but what is it beyond graduation that you wanted to do and then needed to be something that was displayed in your show? And for myself, it was a mixture of black and white, colored, watercolor, and comic illustrations, since at that time, everything that I did was traditional. I didn't really get into too much of the digital art scene until I'd say within the last maybe year and a half. So at this time, which was back in the mid 2000 teens, so say 2015, 2016, so quite a while ago, everything was done on 300 and 400 pound cold press watercolor paper or bristleboard. And it was all varying sizes, and nothing was ever truly at a set dimension of scale, like 11 by 17 or 12 by 18 or 8 by 10. None of that was really something that I gave too much thought on at that time. But I wanted it to be that there was a lot of variety in size as well as in subject matter for the show. And it was a complete success. I definitely enjoyed the art show that I had. But then when it came to graduating, sometimes what you had expected for your artistic self doesn't exactly go to plan the way that you want it to. During the last year or so of university, working on my bachelor's degree and preparing for my art show, at that time, I was living with my mother. And we had come to find out that she had cancer, and it was already stage 4 by the time she was diagnosed. And she had opted to not go through treatment because she was a nurse for 37 years. She knew what it entailed, and I was not going to fight her on it. She wanted a quality of life to the end that the therapy would more than likely probably make it to where it was worse than it was. So I won't go into details on it, but let's just say that when her time came was about 4 to 5 months after I graduated with my bachelor's degree. And even during school, being able to juggle schooling and work and taking care of her and the house and all of the car stuff for both of our cars and making sure all bills were paid on time and making sure all errands were done. It was a lot to do. So having my art and all the other responsibilities on top of that was a lot to juggle. And I know that there are a lot of people out there in situations that are worse or similar or not as bad, and it's definitely not fair to compare anyone, so there's no comparisons here. But I am a believer in the fact that you are only given so much that you can handle because that's what you can handle at that time. And when it came to the end of my time with my mom, I never really knew exactly what my art career would end up looking like, mostly because when I was done with college, it was mostly focusing on my mother's needs and not mine. So pretty much after I got my diploma, I didn't even give art a second thought for a long time. And sometimes that's a form of grieving, but I actually never grieved until many years later, and I didn't even know exactly how to grieve. I just tried to live my life, but apparently grieving can come in many different ways, and not just sitting in your room with the lights off with either melancholy music or no music and just sobbing. But it can be in many different ways, and for everyone it's different depending on the individual and how it can affect you in so many different ways. So I'm sure that, as a lot of you know, Joann is going out of business. And one of the things that they're doing is getting rid of their paper systems and drawers and things that they're just not going to have the product on anymore. So I managed to get both of these 8.5 by 11 paper tray. And I believe this one is like an 11 by 20 or something, but one of those really elongated ones, which is fantastic because some of my bigger prints go up to about 17 inches long. So this is going to be fantastic. Plus I have the really big, like 24 by 30 sheets that I'm going to be cutting down to fit onto here anyway, because I don't do anything that's more than 11 by 17 or 12 by 18 or things like that. So this is perfect for me to finally have a place to put the big sheets of paper that are currently just sitting in a bag, which makes me very, very sad. And then this gigantic 8.5 by 11 one, I'm so happy to have these. I can't wait to put them up. Woohoo! It's still sad to hear that Joann is going out of business though. So I think as of Today, the 14th of May, 2025, there's 8 days left, is what they showed in the window. So if you have a local Joann, see if there's anything that's still there that you may need, because unfortunately, it's going bye-bye. When university was done and it was time for me to figure out what I was going to do, I didn't know if I was going to be making a life for myself in Michigan or if it was going to be somewhere else. So I went a couple of different routes here, and it'll mostly be a TLDR. I went to Washington, the state, Washington. Didn't really make any headway out there in terms of what I had thought I would. Then I packed up my whole life from there after having had everything moved out there. And I drove across the country and moved down south. There was family there. And for a little while, I started figuring out, okay, could I make my life happen here? Is this something I really want to do? Do I want to stay down here? Is there enough job opportunities here? Well, after a couple of months, it was just not the place I needed to be and feel like I was fulfilled in my environment. So I moved back up into the Midwest, and I was in Ohio for a bit. And I did manage to find a really nice job there as a artist and designer in the customer service department of a clothing company. And I eventually became the art design lead, and that was a really fun job. I enjoyed it very much. I was in an art field for my profession. It was enjoyable every day going in. The pay was pretty minimal, but I liked what I did, so I didn't care too much. But things sometimes just don't work outside of the job and everything. So ultimately, I made the decision to head back to Michigan, and I'm very glad that I did. During the entire shift between moving all the way to the West Coast and then driving across the country, which was a lot of fun, by the way. It's scary as heck, especially when you're doing it by yourself in a car that doesn't have the actual transmission wiring for towing things, but it did fine. I had a Dodge Journey, loved that car. Kind of wish I never got rid of it, but it did. Anyway, I had one of the big U-Haul trailers, all my stuff in it, my car loaded down, and I just drove for 4 or 5 days. I took my time, so I did get to definitely enjoy some sights, and the mountains were beautiful, and I was lucky that when I was driving, I had gone in a period where there were no major snowstorms, and apparently a day after I got out of the Rockies, there was a big blizzard that had gone through. So I'm very grateful I didn't get stuck in that. But back to Michigan, when I came back to my home state, it was a little bit difficult to figure out where and how I was going to go about things. I managed to be able to stay for a period at a family member's house, just temporarily, and then moved in with my father and my stepmom sometime thereafter. But then, without getting into too much detail, I was able to get into an apartment, and I was starting to get into other jobs that were also art related. So eventually I was into a small printing company run by a family, and then into a marketing situation with a company that helped to market and promote other companies. So that was enjoyable and a lot of work, but I thought, well, I'm starting to really figure out where it is I want to be and how I want to do it. And then the start of 2020 came around, and well, things just, you can't predict everything. You gonna go potty? Or do you not want to go potty? Well, you're such a goober boy. Aren't you, baby? Yes, I know you goober, baby. Good boy. Good boy. Choco baby. He's starting to get tired. I think you just enjoy chewing on the leash, don't you, baby? You sweet baby. He's getting tired. Oh yes, I know. He good boy. That's good baby. Let's go and chew on that grass. Tell that grass who's boss. Or just chew on the leaves, that works too. Yes, I know. Say bye-bye. I know you're not going to say bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye. This is what a tired boy looks like after a long day adventuring. Who's that good boy? Who's that sweet baby? He's going to pass the heck out. He's good. What do you say, Cider? What do you say, Cider? Is that right? Is that right? You goober baby. When the events of 2020 were taking over, that's when I, looking back now, should have been way more serious about my art and what I wanted to do with it and where I wanted to go with WaddleArt. And I just didn't. Everything was so stressful. I didn't know what was going to happen the next day. And it caused a standstill panic attack to where pretty much every day was filled with anxiety and stress. And even though it's something you can't control, your body and your mind are going to do what they're going to do. And I just needed to figure out, how could I get them to stop doing what they're doing? But fast forwarding through all of that, at the end of the year 2020, I got into a job that I really did enjoy. And it wasn't art making to the extent of being super creative, but it was working for an engineering company who made diagrams of wiring harnesses for vehicles, which I enjoyed a lot. So to give some context, In one of my alma maters, since I have two alma maters, when we were first learning Illustrator in Adobe, I absolutely hated Illustrator. I didn't like anything about it. It drove me nuts. To me, this was not creative. This was just making a bunch of shapes and lines and putting them together, and you might get a logo, you might get some typography, you might get this shape, or you might get this thing. But when I got into the work side of utilizing Adobe Illustrator or even CorelDRAW or Affinity and seeing what it is that they actually could do, I started becoming really obsessed with vectorized art. Not the kind that you see like people doing with a ton of typography and logo making design, but ones that are used in making, say, when you're looking inside a manual for a car, or like Gundam model kits, or even the Lego manuals for how to build your Legos. Those types of illustrations, most of the time, if not all the time, are vectorized images, because vector images are based on math, and you can make them as big or small as you want, and they will never lose their information or pixelate because of the way that they're made. So, that being said, after that particular job, the last one that I had, which was a part of some layoffs here in 2025, I was a technical illustrator who did a lot of vector art making for a company, and I loved the job. It was pretty, after a while, you kind of get into the rhythm of it. There's not a lot that changes. It's just kind of, yeah, I'm really good at this. I got this done really quick. Let's go on to the next one and the next one, and keep repeating. And I came to understand that I actually had a real love for making these diagrams and these harnesses and everything using vector art. And even though it's not the traditional and now digital art that I love to make each day, I enjoyed it a lot. And I'm still, even to this day, trying to still find another job very similar to that in any way that I can, because I enjoy it so much. It's one of those kinds of jobs where, at least for me, it makes it to where my brain can just be in a little bit of an idle mode, get things done, get them done flawlessly, and continue on while thinking of other things. And kind of, you're just in this motion, and there's something nice about it. But the real reason for sharing all of this is, every artist and every creative out there, they have their own journey that they're dealing with, where they either had the journey that went into and then out of or back into, or still in, or not even in at all, into design or art professions. And some individuals just, as soon as they're done with college, if they went, some of them are just self-taught and they just go right for it themselves. But everyone's journey into their art creating and their business for art for themselves, everyone's journey is just that little bit different. And it's filled with so many ups and downs and peaks and valleys. And I think being able to share that is incredibly important, not just for that artist, but for other people who may be inspired or artists themselves, to be able to see that not everything is just black and white or straightforward. And I hope that being able to share these moments that I've had and things that I've gone through kind of help you as well. So now you know who and some of what WaddleArt is. So let's see what else WaddleArt is also all about. So most artists and creatives, they tend to have a message behind who they are and what it is that they're making. And my message for WaddleArt is pretty simple. It's probably just a little bit long-winded. For myself, and what WaddleArt is meant to be is a little art making company that is focused on creativity, brings joy, shows kindness, engages in empathetic thoughts and feelings, is compassionate and shows it to others, has understanding and acceptance for others, but also to show that you should love the life that you want to have and love those within it boundlessly. For WaddleArt, it's all about feeling joy and happiness, as well as allowing and accepting that sometimes sadness can creep in, uncertainty can happen, but with the help of self-confidence and friends and family and those around you, and being able to rely on yourself and your support system, that you can overcome and bound over any obstacle that comes your way. That's what WaddleArt is. And I have an ultimate goal for what I want WaddleArt to be and become, but ultimate goals are one of those things of, you could, I guess, compare it a little bit to the journey of the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King, in terms of, you know where you're going because you have a end goal, but getting there, that becomes its own end goal in its own way, because that journey is so unknown and so fraught with uncertainties. But is that really a bad thing? Why not think of the journey as the journey being the end destination too? Because you may have an ultimate goal at the very far end of that tunnel, but for all you know, there could be things in the way. There could end up being a block. There could be that, oh, you can't see the end of the tunnel anymore. You gotta wade through all the stuff that's coming in front of you and blocking each way that you could go. Or who knows? It's ultimately the main goal for WaddleArt. I don't want to be famous in any way, shape, or form. I just want to be myself, and I want to make art and have it be that I meet new people, meet new artists, meet new up-and-coming creatives, meet just people in general, whether it's some people who craft, or they're travelers, or maybe they're really big into their business, and see what it is they're all about and share stories with them through art, because maybe they do or do not know how to make their own art. Maybe they support or collect from artists because it makes them feel like they're a part of that journey too. I know I do that a lot with some artists that I follow big time. But I just want it to be that the art that I make ultimately is there to be able to bring happiness and positivity and enjoyment to others who see it. That's what I want. And one of the other things that's a already goal for WaddleArt is most of my products are to remain as paper-based. So what I mean by that is I don't really have any desire at this time to go to like print, I don't want to say print on demand, but direct to fabric or direct to garment printing. So I'm not really looking at making socks and shirts and hoodies, or like coffee mugs and things like that, but postcards, greeting cards, stickers, vinyls, notebooks, coloring books, things a lot like that, as well as prints and traditional illustrations and original artwork. Those are the things, the paper-based things, that I'm more so wanting to stay with, because that allows me to make them all for everyone. And I feel that that way it has my personal touch on each item, instead of, oh, I made this, I'm going to send it out, have it made for me and sent back. Now, if I decide later on that I want to expand out a little to maybe include garments and things of characters, then that'll probably be, I'd say, quite a ways from right now. I'm not there yet. But all of that being said, I also ultimately would like to have my own little true studio space. Not necessarily in my house, but a designated space that's kind of situated at the edge of a town where there's also a lot of trees and a nice walking area nearby, something like that. Kind of an Americana mixture with English countryside and the Japanese desire for walking everywhere. That would be ideal, but I don't know if anything like that is nearby. So all that being said, this in a nutshell is WaddleArt, and who, what, and the desires of WaddleArt are. I love to color, and for this video to be all about coloring my printed piece from my April Patreon was one that I didn't really think would be what I would do, but I kind of like it. It allows me to be able to come back and see my coloring for myself, but also show you what it is that I do in terms of, well, I just want to sit here and color, and this is how I do it. But I want to thank you all so much for being here on this pretty one-on-one with WaddleArt, and who and what and the future of WaddleArt is all about. And it means a lot that you were interested to be able to stick around and hear all about me. So thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you. I hope that you'll stick around. I have trying to figure out what the next couple of videos will end up being. I'm not too sure yet, but I definitely want to make sure that future videos that I do, other than having background commentary from my birds, I would like to be able to show you how I make my coloring books, which I'm hoping to have my first one up within the next couple of weeks onto my shop. I'd love to be able to show you how I go about making those, as well as just showing the way that I draw my characters, whether it's traditional or digital, how I clean everything up, how I do my transfer from a sketch to a bristle board final inked piece, to either prepare it for being scanned to the computer or colored as an original image. So there's a lot that I want to show, and I'm hoping you'll stick around for that. So until then, thank you all so much for being here today. I look forward to the next video with you, and I would love to get your feedback or any comments or questions you might have. And no, I will not say please subscribe and everything else. I definitely leave that up to those who desire to join me and see where the journey goes. If you wish to, you're welcome to, but I won't plug that. But thank you so much for being here. Have yourselves a fantastic day and keep waddling on. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.